Week 5, Unit 9, Exercise 1. Causal relations often come in characteristic groups or clusters. For example, in thinking about two people, I might notice that, in contrast to a pair of billiard balls, they often causally act on each other at a distance. A remark to a person several feet away can cause that person to move quickly backward. Cause and effect relations for people have longer time lags than for balls. You do not move instantaneously after I speak, unlike cases in which one ball launches another. There is a noticeable lag. People move on their own without needing an external force. Simple balls do not spontaneously move. Self-generated motion conveys the strong impression that something inside the mover is causing the movement. People can move in irregular ways, darting this way and that. Balls move in smooth, predictable paths unless something else intervenes. People interact contingently. Balls do not. There is a back-and-forth rhythm to many human social interactions, whether they be conversations, silent greetings, or hot pursuit. Taken together, several interacting causal relations distinguish the motions of people from those of simple solids. Exercise 2. Modern democracy evolved from early democracy, and this process began in England before first reaching a fuller extent for free white males in the United States. Modern democracy is a form of rule where political participation is broad but episodic. Citizens participate by voting for representatives, but this occurs only at certain intervals, and there are few means of control other than the vote. Representatives cannot be bound by mandates or instructions. All of this contrasts with early democracy. In early democracies, participation was often restricted to a smaller number of individuals, but for those who enjoyed the right, the frequency of participation was much higher. It was also the case that those who chose representatives could bind them with mandates, and individual localities could either reject central decisions or opt out of them. This created substantial blocking power and therefore a need for consensus. For this reason, there was less of a problem of tyranny of the majority, whereas this is an issue with which all modern democracies must grapple. Exercise 3. To an important extent, we need things to work properly to be predictable and dependable. We would give in to despair if too many failed to do their job. A world where things perform their proper function is a hospitable place, and what makes it hospitable is precisely its reliability and predictability. There is a point, however, beyond which this very flawlessness starts to induce a serious form of alienation. For when things work flawlessly without friction, less and less is demanded of us. In the long run, this effortlessness is our undoing. It's not just that we became increasingly unnecessary, which would be bad enough, but that we become more and more like the things themselves. We unconsciously start copying them. Their predictability becomes ours, and so does their fundamental inertness. Near something that never changes its patterns, we too slide into a heavily patterned existence. At the limit, if nothing changes to attract our attention, we become indistinguishable from those things and lose ourselves in their midst. Hospitability is admirable, but when a place becomes too hospitable, it turns positively hostile. When predictability and dependability of things are desirable to a certain degree, a perfectly patterned world that doesn't require our active effort and distinctiveness becomes harmful to us. Exercise 4. One of the biggest challenges in overcoming fear is that although the brain learns lessons quickly, it does not unlearn lessons quickly. Ever traveled by train? On every trip, trains obey the direction of the tracks. If an engineer wanted to take the train in a different direction, but lacked the track, it would not be possible. New tracks would be necessary to divert the train onto a new course, and once a train has a destination on a track, it churns with momentum. The challenge lies in laying the new track. Like most goals in life, it would take patience, effort, and commitment to build that new path. There is a similar challenge in facing anxiety and changing your brain's chemistry. In other words, creating a new neural pathway that is unafraid of what you currently fear is going to take some effort. But it can absolutely be done. You can change your brain's response to your anxiety-provoking stimulus, creating a new neural pathway. Exercise 5 through 7. Keenly observant and alert to the slightest changes in their surroundings, cats could make wonderful guardians. So far, however, they've firmly rejected any such callings. All save for one. The cat in question is named TC, and he has earned international fame for his exceptional ability to predict epileptic seizures, a skill he's used to ease the suffering of his grateful owner. Ironically, however, the English cat had endured quite a bit at the hands of a human who stuffed TC and his siblings in a box and tossed it in a river. TC was rescued and taken to an adoption center where he became the pet of Michael Edmonds, a Sheffield man who suffered from an extremely dangerous and unpredictable form of epilepsy. The disorder causes sudden, violent seizures that strike without warning. The problem was so serious that he couldn't leave home unescorted for fear of having an attack at some unexpected time or place. Edmund's new cat provided timely help. TC took a great deal of interest in his new owner, particularly, it seemed, when he was about to seize. This was remarkable, because Edmonds displays no symptoms prior to attacks, or at least none detectable by humans. We noticed that TC began staring at my stepfather prior to a seizure and then ran to my mother to let her know all is not well, acting as an early warning system, Edmund's stepdaughter Samantha Laidler told the BBC. The behavior was so unexpected that it took a while for family members to make the connection between TC's staring sessions and Edmund's epileptic fits. But once the link was established, the fame of the former stray spread far and wide. In 2006, he was nominated for a prestigious Rescue Cat of the Year award. Quite an accomplishment for a cat who was once literally thrown away as garbage. Exercise 8. Valuable cultural works disappear for all sorts of reasons. Government censorship can remove works from the market. Books and records go out of print when they are considered commercially unviable. Films, from The Interview to Disney's Song of the South, are hidden from view for reasons that range from political controversies to pure marketing strategies. Works can also be lost to accidents, natural disasters, and plain old inattention. Ownership helps guard against those losses. When we own our copies, we have greater incentives to make efforts to preserve them, and it's harder for publishers and government actors to erase them. And when works are distributed widely on secondary markets through resale and lending, the risk of loss is reduced. Even though we all benefit from the preservation of our shared cultural heritage, outside of the small circle of archivists and cultural historians, few of us give it much thought. So when we chose to license rather than own, we are chipping away at preservation efforts. Exercise 9. Look around you right now, and there's a good chance you'll find yourself in the presence of some glass. Whatever the item, a drinking glass, glass lenses, a window pane, it was once a molten liquid that reached temperatures of over 1700 degrees Celsius and was then allowed to cool. During this process, the molecules never achieved a structured arrangement, but instead remained as disordered as they had been in the liquid state. A molecular snapshot of the liquid state and the glass state would appear almost identical, although there is more crowding in the glass thanks to the contraction that occurs during cooling. As this happens, molecules have a harder time slipping quickly past one another, so they begin to slow down, and as they do this, they make stronger connections. It's a bit like how it's easier to grab the hand of someone who is walking slowly past you than to grab the hand of someone driving past you in a convertible going 150 kilometers per hour, which is not advisable. As the cooling continues, so too does this process until at last the molecules become fixed in place and glass is formed. Exercise 10. Proteins are among the most important molecules we possess because they are also among the most collaborative. They play distinct roles in helping the body to interpret changes, communicate them, and decide on actions as a result. Our bodies work in large part because our proteins know their own role, appreciate that of their peers, and act accordingly. They work as part of a team, but through the expression of entirely individual personalities and capabilities. Dynamic, yet defined, individual within a team context, proteins can offer a new model for how we organize and interact as people. Like humans, proteins respond to their environment, communicate information, make decisions, and then put them into action. But unlike us, proteins are actually very good at doing this, working in an instinctively collaborative way without letting personality clashes, personal problems, or office politics become obstacles. And they achieve this not by trying to fit in with their environment, but by aligning and making use of their various chemistries, embracing the complementarities of contrasting types. Humans with an organization often attempt to conform to their environment, but protein molecules collaborate through utilizing their unique characteristics and abilities. Exercise 11. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that runs the brain's reward and pleasure center. It enables us to see rewards and pushes us to go achieve them. It is also highly addictive. All addictions cause a powerful surge in dopamine. When we achieve goals, dopamine makes us feel pleasure. Our brains develop tolerance for dopamine, meaning that, as time goes on, increasingly higher levels of dopamine are needed to get the same level of pleasure. Addictive, novelty-seeking behaviors are the result of high levels of dopamine. This is how one gets addicted to achieving goals. The neurons that fire together get wired together in our brains, meaning stress and the dopamine rush that goes along with it get connected. This might explain why some chronically stressed people don't celebrate achieving goals. They're constantly looking for the next goal to get their next amount of dopamine. Their employees might feel discouraged because their achievements go overlooked or unappreciated. These managers may artificially create crisis to justify the elevated level of stress and dopamine their brains have gotten used to. Exercise 12 through 14. When David was 3 years old, his parents opened a restaurant in the small town of Weatherford, Texas, the first Asian restaurant in the whole country. His dad, an immigrant from Thailand, saw it as an incredible business opportunity. He was right. Loyal customers kept their little family restaurant open for nearly 40 years. Growing up as one of the few Asian American kids in his school wasn't easy. Even though David made some of his best memories and strongest friendships in Weatherford, there were a few immature kids who mocked him only because he looked different from them. And there was a boy, Ollie, who was 1 year older than David, and he was one of whom David hated the most. Ollie would say mean things to David, making fun of him. However, Ollie's family were regular customers of the restaurant that David's family owned. One day, David finally told his dad about Ollie and all the mean things he had said. His dad said, "Honey, it breaks my heart to hear that. I know how upset and sad you've been." So David was hoping that Ollie was going to get his punishment. He didn't think his dad was going to cause a scene and throw the family out. But couldn't he at least hide some hot pepper in his pad thai for his son's revenge? Instead, the next time Ollie's family came in to eat, David's father was just as polite as ever. David watched them clean their plates and leave with satisfied sighs. After they left, he asked his father why he didn't kick them out. With a smile, he answered, "I got my revenge. By giving that family quality service and delicious food, I elevated my family above their ugliness." Remember, son, even when people say ugly things to you, you shouldn't let them take your dignity.